Hello and welcome back to our TactileView training series here. In this episode, I guess this would be episode 4. We're going to go ahead and talk about importing pictures. So the reason I'm talking about importing pictures is because, well, honestly, on our toolbar, this is our next item down after text labeling, which was our previous episode. Now, if you do have a little bit older version of TactileView, you might find this import picture item or option on your toolbar to be lower down near the bottom, near the graphing tools, which we will cover later on. So if yours is in a slightly different order, don't let that scare you at all, but you might find the same kind of icon down below, or lower on your toolbar, I should say. This icon looks kind of like a little photograph with a little plus sign at the top, and it says import if you hover your mouse over it, and the keyboard shortcut for that would be the letter I. So if I click on this, just like with all of our other kind of toolbar items, we have a little submenu that pops up, and we have kind of 3 things on here. The first one, truthfully, I don't use very often, but I will talk about it real quick just in case anybody has a use for these, and this is some figures. So in here we open up and there is a little figure library. There's some things like some arrows, some chess pieces, electrical symbols. These look like more chess pieces. Some different signs. Mostly these are like greater than, equal to, plus or minus. Some of the different signs for playing cards like hearts and spades and things like that. They have some, it's honestly not much here. So that's why I don't really use it too terribly much. However, they do give you this, which is kind of neat. They give you a personal folder. So if you can find this location on your computer, you could put in like your own kind of symbols for quick importing. So if you have a little, I guess, library of pictures or something like that you create for yourself, you could put them inside this personal folder. I'm not going to dive into that too terribly much here, but hypothetically, you could create your own folder of symbols and create your own little library to pull in quickly and easily if that would be useful for you. So that's getting a little bit more advanced than we're going to cover today, so we're just going to really just talk about bringing in pictures. Now going back to our little import option here, or import picture option, again, first we have that little figure option, which we just talked about. Next we have a little image icon that says SVG below it. SVG is a type of vector graphic. Could be a really important one for some folks who are switching over to TactileView. SVG is a vector graphic format. And if that doesn't mean anything to you, that's okay. Basically, it means it's a picture type or image type that can be scaled infinitely. Typically, you see this type of file being created or used in a graphic design program for creating like logos or something like that, such as Adobe Illustrator would be a common one. Maybe CorelDRAW would be another potentially common one. So the reason I say this could be important for some people is if you are one of those folks that have been using CorelDRAW, maybe alongside a Tiger embosser in the past, you could save your CorelDRAW or Adobe Illustrator files that you've been using with those machines. You could save them as an SVG, which is a generic vector graphic format. Either one of those programs should be able to save it, and then those SVG files could be opened and imported, and TactileView will even honor the labels that you've put in Braille in those programs as well, which is pretty cool. You might want to do a little bit of tweaking, a little bit of reformatting. In my experience, they've come in pretty well, but sometimes they aren't perfect, so you might have to do a little bit of tweaking. But anyway, for those folks using Adobe Illustrator or CorelDRAW, and you are now maybe making the switch over to TactileView and want to bring those in some way, shape, or form, so you aren't losing those, you can do that. And even the only Braille printers that can handle those CorelDRAW or Adobe Illustrator files have been the Tiger embossers. So maybe you're switching to a different model and you've created all these graphics for one of the Tiger ones, and you're like, oh my goodness, well, I can't switch away from Tiger even if I wanted to, because I'm kind of stuck in, and it's the only one that can use my Tactile graphics. Well, TactileView might be your solution for that. You could bring in your SVGs you created for those Tigers and use them for any embosser, basically, that TactileView supports, which is basically any embosser that supports Tactile graphics. All right, lastly, and this is probably the most common option that everybody really wants to hear about, and this is importing JPEGs or PNGs. So you'll see another little image icon with a plus to import a picture, and this one will have a little label that says JPEG, and under that it says PNG. So JPEG and PNGs are probably the most common image file formats out there. Even basically almost any picture is probably a JPEG or a PNG. There are some kind of new file formats coming out there, like thanks to like Apple and iPhones, but JPEG and PNG are basically still the de facto standards for image file formats. So if you have a picture or have taken a picture or something like that from maybe your phone, or maybe you did a screenshot on your device or something like that, this is the way to bring that in likely. And I will kind of show off another way to kind of make things pictures if they weren't. That's kind of my little hack. So, but without further ado, let me actually import a picture and show you what we can do with it, because this is a super powerful option. So I'm going to click on that JPEG and PNG, and this lets me browse my computer. Now, it remembered the library I was working in previously, and this is where I've saved some of my kind of sample art that I like to show off inside TactileView here. So I got like a little house, a elephant, a hippopotamus, and a rocket ship. So I could do any of these, or actually I'm gonna do the rocket ship today. I feel like that one. Okay, so I click on that, and then I click inside my document, and it places in my rocket ship. Now there's my rocket ship. I can kind of click on it, drag it around. I can grab one of these kind of little purple boxes on the corner and resize that if I want to scale that up or down. Okay, I could change the title there to something other than title, like rocket ship, if I wanted to. And now this is where I talked about this briefly in a previous episode, where you can look in dot view and line view. So I've brought this picture in, and depending on the capabilities of your Braille printer, for example, if you have a tiger, tigers do the multiple dot heights, which is pretty neat. So darker lines will be higher dots, and lighter colors will be lower dots, and so you will kind of actually be able to kind of distinctly feel the different parts of my little rocket ship here, because I do have solid color fills within it. Like the fire coming out of the back is red and yellow and things like that. And so those would be embossed as different dot heights and could actually work great just like it is here. But if you have most other Braille printers, that many of them that still create beautiful tactile graphics but cannot do the multiple dot heights, this is going to emboss as one solid wall of all the same dot height. So you basically have the shape of a rocket, but all filled solid, which is really no good. And so to illustrate this, I'm going to go over here back to my top toolbar. And you may remember from our previous episode that there is line view and braille view, or dot view. So if I switch over to the dot view, you will see, because I currently have an index basic D, which does not do the multiple dot height selected, that my rocket ship turned into a just mass of dots, basically in sort of the shape of a rocket. This is a borderline useless tactile graphic at this stage. So, woohoo! You can bring in pictures. Now, again, if you have a tiger embossed with multiple dot heights, it would be more useful than my basic D model would be. But still, even then, almost no matter what embosser you have, you probably want to do some cleanup on this. And so this is importing pictures. And so I'm kind of actually jumping a little bit ahead in this episode on our toolbar to something called filters. So after our import picture, I'm going to skip over two items here and go down. There's one called filter. And so if I click on this filter menu, we have a variety of different filters here. Now, truthfully, I find that the kind of icons in the filters menu are a little bit hard to tell exactly what they are trying to do based off of the kind of icon or image. You can hover your mouse over it and it will tell you, like this one is convert it to black and white. But what I like to do is the exact same filter menu is up at the top in the menu system, and there's a whole menu dedicated just to filters, and this just has a name and text, or a text description for the name. So it's just a little more obvious based off the text to me what it does. So the one I really want to point people to, and the most exciting one, honestly, is this convert to line drawing. But before I do that, I'll just briefly cover the other ones, because there are some other ones that may be useful, but the convert to line drawing, trust me, is the best. But for some things, you may want to convert this image to like a black and white image. That could be useful in certain situations, again, with potentially certain kinds of embossers that do the multiple dot heights. If you want to change the line thickness for basically everything on your picture at one time, they have a filter for that. If you want to add contours, blur an image, truthfully I haven't found the blur an image particularly helpful, but you may find a use for it. Replace color with another color, again, probably more useful on those embossers that do different dot heights based on the color or the darkness or lightness of the color. Switch it to a negative, which would invert your colors. Rotate clockwise, rotate counterclockwise, mirror horizontally, mirror vertically. Those last few could actually be useful in certain situations. Scale it, so if you need to resize things, or fuse all objects with bitmap. That last option I will just briefly touch on here, and elaborate on later on. But basically, when you first bring something in, it's considered like an object. You can click and drag it around, but once you convert it to be part of the bitmap, it will all kind of turn into a black line drawing, and that's where you could use like your eraser and things like that. Again, I will elaborate on that further. So going back to filters, convert to line drawing. This is going to be your best friend for your cleanup work, because on basically every other tactile graphic program out there, if you want to clean something up, you have to grab your little eraser tool and you have to go and hand erase all this. The convert to line drawing tool is going to do it all for you automatically. So I hit convert to line drawing, and voila, boom, our rocket ship has converted into a line drawing of a rocket ship. But it truthfully still doesn't look great. It's lost some detail. So you may notice that there is a little kind of scale bar that popped up visually on the screen, and I can grab my mouse and click and drag on this, or I can use my left and right arrow keys on my keyboard. Either one will work. And this is to add or subtract detail, and this is why it looks kind of crummy at the beginning here, is because TactileView just like, we're going to throw it in the middle. It's kind of a happy medium. But basically this is the amount of contrast or amount of detail you want from this graphic. And so again, TactileView kind of just throws it in the middle, a happy medium. Sometimes that's giving you too much detail, and sometimes it's giving you too little. I find it seems to err on the too little side. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna scale it back and decrease this, and you're gonna see as I do, I'm just using my arrow keys, my left arrow key right now. You're gonna see some of that detail of that rocket ship, some of those edges and lines come back to life. And so I'm gonna do that until all my lines look pretty solid, which is about right there. I think that looks perfect. Just to show you real quick, if I went too far, right, you can see kind of some of like, well, actually even at the furthest, that actually looks pretty good. But some of them you'll see you get extra kind of gunk, if you will. And if I went the other way too far, basically it just disappears. So you kind of want to scale this till you find that happy medium where everything looks nice. I want mine about like that. Now what I'm gonna do is just again go back to that dot view to check that. And there we go. There's my dot view. And now this is again using, I've got a basic D, index basic D embosser, which would be very similar to a Romeo or Juliet, if you have one of those, tactile graphics capability wise. And that looks wonderful now. So I have a beautiful outline with almost no work. It just converted to a line drawing, and I just added and subtracted to the level of detail I want. This looks awesome now. If I did want some kind of fills or kind of things like that, I can use my other tools, which we'll get into in a later episode, to add color fills or texture fills or something like that to this guy. Or we can use our Braille label tool like we learned in the last episode to label this guy up. Label our fire from our engine, label our wings, label our porthole on our rocket, and so on. All right, y'all, that's going to do it for this episode. In the next one, we'll talk about using the selection tool. Okay.